The Rival, probably the character who stands out the most in any Pokemon game playthrough. Whether they're jerks, almost evil, friendly, or friendly, they can sometimes be interesting. So good morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR, and today we're going to talk about some of the most interesting facts about every Pokemon rival. Or at least, try to. Some rivals are definitely more interesting than others are. The first rival is Blue, and hey, wouldn't you know it, we've already talked about Blue in the Facts About Every Champion video. That's just what happens when you occupy multiple lines of work, you little overachiever. But I do want to address a line I said in that video. In that video, I said that Blue is the first champion we fight, but it's not clear if he was actually the first champion of the Indigo Plateau. Did he dethrone an existing trainer, or maybe Lance? Well, the answer is surprisingly, no. Apparently, there's an email on Professor Oak's computer in the postgame of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee from his cousin Samson Oak, who lives in the Alola region. It reads, I heard that the Pokemon League now has a champion. Congratulations. Pokemon Leagues all around the world will also have champions from now on. It's very interesting to me because there are no gyms or even a Pokemon League where I live. I'm thinking about going to the Indigo Plateau to have a look. And at first I thought, wow, this is really cool. It confirms that Blue actually was the first champion of not just Kanto, but the entire Pokemon world. But then I remembered, this is the Let's Go timeline where absolutely nothing makes sense. And that also would make Trace the first champion in the world, since they never mentioned in this timeline that Red or Blue were ever past champions. And that thought just disgusts me. So I kinda want to forget that I ever came across this forbidden knowledge. So just this once, let's talk about Gary Oak instead. Gary Oak is the only original series character in the entire English dub of the anime to never have his voice actor change. Although Giovanni and Tracy later ended the series with their original voice actors, they did briefly have new voice actors during the transition period. Aside from Gladion, Gary Oak is also the only rival of Ash's to catch a legendary Pokemon, as he obtained a Regidrago in Pokemon Journeys. One Pokemon rival with a well-known arc in the games is Silver. Initially, Silver starts the game off as a cold-hearted, bitter rival who only treats his Pokemon as tools, but eventually grows into a trainer who learns to bond with them. And this change in his character in Gold, Silver, and Crystal's post-game is reflected through a change in his battle sprite, where instead of pointing to the side, he now points in the correct direction of his opponent. Does this have any deep meaning? I don't know. Probably not. But it is one of the rare instances in 2D Pokemon games where a character's sprite changes. A trait that I believe he only shares with the previous rival Blue, who changes sprites in all the Gen 1 games as well as the remakes Fire Red and Leaf Green. He is also one of the few rivals to receive a different battle theme in his last encounter, as he actually shares the champion theme with Red and Lance during his final battle at the Indigo Plateau in the postgame. In Gen 2 only, not Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And while Silver never appeared in the main Pokemon anime, with his character essentially being adapted into Paul later in Diamond and Pearl, he did make a brief cameo appearance in the Japanese opening of The Legend of Thunder, where him and his Nidoking are seen defeating Jimmy before Jimmy later defeats him at the Johto League Conference. Huh, isn't it funny how they always beat the rival when it matters most? This show is as scripted as the WWE! As for Brendan and May, I covered most of the interesting stuff about them in the Protagonist Facts video, but for them as rivals, there is an interesting bit of trivia. In Pokemon Emerald, they add an extremely rare optional rival battle with them in Rustboro City. The encounter you have with them is forced, but you can opt to skip the battle if you so choose. This battle was not retained in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. And in the original Gen 3 games, Brendan and May are the only rivals whose starters never reach its final stage, as their starter only peaks at level 34 in their final battle in Lily Cove City. Thankfully, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire did correct this by boosting their team's levels in Lily Cove City, and by adding an additional battle in the epilogue where they can now Mega Evolve their starter. Anyway, as for the Chad rival of Hoenn, Wally, it is possible for him to fail his capture tutorial against the Wild Ralts in Gen 3. If his Rental Zigzagoon is generated with high enough attack IVs, the Wild Ralts is generated with a low enough defense, and both tackles have their highest possible damage roll, it will be KO'd. The odds of this happening, though, are a very small 1 in 200,000. In fact, it is much more likely for Wally's Ralts to show up as a shiny, as Game Freak decided to not shiny lock it for some reason. If you combine the odds of the Ralts being shiny and Wally KOing it, then the odds of both events happening at the same time are an astronomically low 1 in 74 million. However, even if Wally's Ralts is shiny, or if he KOs it, the game will continue as normal with him having a non-shiny Ralts. Though perhaps the potential for Wally to capture a shiny Ralts is referenced in Pokemon Masters, where Wally wields a shiny Gardevoir in addition to his normal Gallade. In Pokemon Platinum, Barry oddly has a post-game battle taken away. In Diamond and Pearl, Barry's rematch team at the battle area would jump 10 levels after 10 Hall of Fame entries, and then 20 levels after 20 Hall of Fame entries. But in Platinum, while the coding for the 10-level jump team exists, it goes completely unused in the final game for some reason. The data for the level 20 jump team is used, however, so there's just one less variation. However, at level 85 in Pokemon Platinum, Barry for many years held the record for the highest level team of any rival character. Though as of 2024, he has now been dethroned. Hey! More on that later. Also, in Pokemon Masters EX, Barry finally reveals why he wants to find people so badly. He wants to gather enough money to build his own battle tower and have his dad face him there. Wholesome enough, but dude, get a job. Cheren and Bianca both represent the themes of Pokemon Black and White, with Cheren pursuing the ideal of strength, while Bianca is forced to face the truth that battling isn't for everybody. To further drive home this symbolism, Cheren will always head in the direction of the next location whenever a battle against him concludes, and Bianca will always turn back towards the previous location the player came from. Their names are also derived from words that mean black or white in certain languages. Also, as much as I'd love to include N in this section, I covered him in the Facts About Every Villain video, so oh well, go watch that when you have time. And if you also have time, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed. Most of my viewers aren't subscribed, and if you do, you'll always be in the loop for my new videos. It's free. But it's alright, as Unova has no shortage of rivals. Of course, we can't forget about Hugh from Pokemon Black 2 and White 2. With Black 2 and White 2's difficulty modes, it's possible to do some wonky things with Hugh's teams. One of the funniest being in his initial battle, he can have a level 4 or level 6 starter depending on whether you're playing in easy mode or challenge mode, even though he receives his starter at the exact same moment that you did. It's also possible to make his team level down in challenge mode, as when you fight him in Undella Town, his team should be level 45, 43, and 43. But when you later team up with him to fight against Team Plasma in Lacunosa Town, that same team will be 2 levels lower, since challenge mode doesn't increase the levels of allies. Catelyn and Serena I also covered in the protagonist video already because, duh, they're protagonists. But Kalos does fortunately have other rivals for us to cover. Or, unfortunately, I should say. Shauna and Trevor battle against you the least of any rivals in any Pokemon game, with both of them only having 2 battles against you throughout all of X and Y, and no rematches in the post-game. As for Tierno, yeah, I'm gonna have to turn to the anime for this one. There's not a single cool thing about this guy from the games. An alternate universe version of Tierno actually makes an appearance in Pokemon the movie I Choose You, where he is oddly seen picking Charmander. I say oddly because in the XY anime, his starter was Squirtle. But it looks like in this universe he got Gary Oaked. Happens to all of us, I suppose. Speaking of the anime, one of Ash's Alola rivals, Hao, was originally meant to have a much larger role in the Sun and Moon anime. But because his Japanese voice actor Daiki Yamashita was preoccupied with work involving his role as Deku in My Hero Academia, Hao was not able to make any appearances between his debut and the beginning of the Alola League. Which is a bit ironic considering that he went on to become the voice of Go, a full-time character in Pokemon Journeys. I guess Pokemon waved a lot more money in his face the second time around. As for Gladion, this one seems like a bit of a no-brainer, but he's the only rival to use a legendary Pokemon in every battle against the player, because Type Null is considered a legendary for some reason. Even though it's just one of many synthetic Pokemon, like, really, what's the big deal? Trace! Screw this guy, I have nothing. The number on Hop's jersey in Pokemon Sword and Shield is 189, which could be read as leaping with some Japanese wordplay. So basically, it's just a pun on his name being Hop. Haha, how funny. While Hop would only become the 3rd rival behind N and Gladion to own a legendary Pokemon, he is the only character to ever use multiple Gigantamax Pokemon in the core games. If rebattled in the Champion tournaments and Winden, Hop will Gigantamax his Corviknight. But once the G-Max forms for the Galar starters were added in the Isle of Armor, he starts using those instead during the Galarian Star Tournament. In the Pokemon Masters timeline, he also catches the Galarian Zapdos that roams the wild area during the Crown Tundra storyline. Marnie is the only rival who can be rematched in multiple different areas during the postgame, as she can be battled in her hometown of Spikemouth or in the Champions Tournament. Her team will be exactly the same regardless of the location, but she'll wear her standard outfit in Spikemouth and her gym leader outfit at Winden, where the game also finally recognizes her as an official gym leader. Odd how we went from having 0 Dark-type gym leaders in the first 7 generations to having 2 in one game, huh? As for Bede, he is the only trainer to ever permanently change his type specialty during the events of the game. Jasmine also apparently changed from Rock to Steel, but that happened before the events of Gold and Silver. Bede's transition from a Psychic trainer to a Fairy-type gym leader is also somewhat foreshadowed by his team though, as his 2 main Pokemon, Hatenna and Galarian Ponyta, are both pure Psychic types who gain the Fairy typing through evolution. His other 2 Pokemon he uses later in the story, Mawile and Gardevoir, are also Pokemon who were reclassified as Fairy types later in Gen 6. And his last Pokemon, Sylveon, which is used during the postgame, is another Pokemon that evolves from a non-Fairy type. So in a way, Bede's entire team represents him as a trainer. Clara, the Pokemon Sword exclusive rival from the Isle of Armor, had to throw that in there in case somebody didn't know or just forgot, because it's easy to forget. Her League card features a hilariously warped Slowbro in the background as evidence that Clara likely edits her own selfies, just as many people do in real life to make themselves look more attractive. It's also kinda neat that her and Avery are able to share the same ace Pokemon in Galarian Slowbro, because Galarian Slowbro is both Poison and Psychic type. At level 87 in the League Club rematches in the Indigo Disc, Nemona has officially dethroned Barry as Pokemon's strongest rival character. Though I suppose that should be expected since she is a champion after all. She shares this honor with another new rival, Kieran, whose Hydrapple also peaks at level 87 in the League Club. Nemona is also the only NPC in Scarlet and Violet who owns a 3-segmented Dunsparce. As for Arven, his story was apparently inspired by Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's own director, Shigeru Omori, who lost his parents at a young age and wanted to put his personal experiences and struggles into a character. This ultimately won Arven the 2022 Famitsu Award for Best Character of the Year. Penny is originally from the Galar region, with additional dialogue with her in the DLC strongly implying her to be the daughter of Peony from the Crown Tundra. Her eyes are also drawn in a remarkably similar style to her uncle, Chairman Rose, and her sister, Peonia. Her hair and leggings also match the colors of Galar's mascots, Zacian and Zamazenta, though it could also be a reference to the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons with her being a gamer girl and all. As for our final rival, the aforementioned Kieran, while in most languages of the game Carmine implies that he is a teenager, the French version of Scarlet and Violet outright confirms him to be 14 years old. Which honestly just makes me wonder how old Florian and Juliana are supposed to be. Because while they look noticeably older than Kieran, they also look really young at the same time. Kieran's team that he uses at Blueberry Academy includes many references to real-life competitive Pokemon teams, such as a Drizzle Politoed and, well, having an Incineroar. But most interestingly, in the coding of Scarlet and Violet, it's revealed that his Dragonite is also normal Terra-typed, a reference to Dragonite's most common Terra-type in the VGC format, even though Kieran himself will never terrestrialize his Dragonite. But yeah, bro's clearly been in the lab, he's picking up some strats. So with that, who is your favorite Pokemon rival? Let me know in the comment section down below. But don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.